You know all the big names that make our phones and laptops, right? But what about the companies that build the brains inside them? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at how Intel didn't just make a part for the personal computer. They pretty much built the entire world it lived in.
Have you ever really thought about this? It's kind of weird, isn't it? You don't get a sticker for the transmission on the outside of your car. So why does this tiny little chip buried deep inside your laptop get its own logo slapped right on the case? Well, the answer to that question is just a masterclass in strategy.
And this right here really breaks down the two sides of that strategy. See, on one hand, Intel basically created the standard language that all personal computers would speak. And on the other hand, they built this incredibly powerful, self-contained system to design, build, and test all their chips under one roof. So let's unpack how these two pieces came together to create something unstoppable.
All right, so let's get into it. Our story here, it doesn't start with some big bang, but with a handshake. A single business deal back in the early 80s that would literally set the course for the entire tech industry for decades.
Okay, so picture this. It's the early 1980s. IBM, they're the undisputed king of computing, and they decide they want to build a personal computer. They need a brain for it, a CPU. Now, they could have built their own, sure, but to get it done fast, they went with this smaller, super innovative company called Intel and its 8088 processor. And that decision, well, that was the moment everything changed.
And look, this thing wasn't just a success. It was a total phenomenon. The IBM PC absolutely flew off the shelves. And because every single one of them had an Intel chip beating at its heart, Intel's fate was suddenly tied to the hottest, fastest-growing product on the planet.
So that one deal, it created this ripple effect that pretty quickly turned into a tidal wave, and it established a standard that, believe it or not, we still live with today.
All of a sudden, everybody wanted to build a computer just like IBM's. To make these what they called IBM-compatible clones, companies like Compaq and Dell, they had to make sure their machines could run all the same software. And how do you do that? Well, you had no choice. You had to use an Intel processor. Just like that, Intel wasn't just another supplier, they were the standard.
The technical name for this standard is the x86 architecture, but honestly, the best way to think about it is like a universal language for PCs. For any software to talk to the hardware, it had to speak x86. And guess who was the native speaker? Yep, Intel.
And this is where the engine really kicks into high gear. You get the famous Wintel alliance. It was this perfect feedback loop. Intel would drop a faster, more powerful chip, then Microsoft would release a new version of Windows that took full advantage of that power. So what did you do? You upgraded your PC to run the cool new software, which, you guessed it, fueled demand for even faster chips from Intel. It was a perfect, absolutely unstoppable cycle of growth.
Okay, but how did Intel keep up with this insane demand and constantly stay ahead of everyone else? The answer wasn't just in their brilliant designs, it was in their factories. This was their secret weapon. So Intel operated as what's called an integrated device manufacturer, or IDM. What that means is they designed and manufactured their own chips, all in-house. Now think about their competitors. They would design a chip, but then they'd have to send it off and wait for some outside factory to actually build it. Meanwhile, Intel's design and manufacturing teams were working hand in hand, side by side. This gave them this incredible advantage in speed and optimization.
This relentless pace was famously summed up by Intel's own co-founder Gordon Moore in what we now all know as Moore's Law. He predicted that the number of transistors on a chip, basically its power, would double roughly every 2 years. But for Intel, this wasn't just some abstract prediction. It was their business plan. They poured billions and billions into their own factories to make it a reality, and it left their competitors choking on their dust.
And just think about it from a practical standpoint. When the PC market absolutely exploded, who could actually deliver millions and millions of chips, reliably, on time? Only Intel. Because of their IDM model, they had these massive factories called fabs just ready to go. They could meet global demand when nobody else could, cementing their leadership through sheer, brute force production power.
Okay, so they had the industry standard and they had the manufacturing power. But the final piece of this puzzle, it was pure marketing genius. How on earth do you sell a product that the customer never, ever sees?
You have to remember, before the 1990s, the CPU was this totally anonymous component buried deep inside the computer case. It was a business-to-business part, something for engineers to worry about. The average person walking into a store to buy a computer had no idea what it was, and frankly, they didn't care who made it.
And then came Intel Inside. It was brilliant. Intel started marketing directly to you,
The consumer. They put that now iconic logo on TV ads, in magazines, and most importantly, they paid PC makers to put a sticker right on the outside of the computers themselves. They literally made the invisible visible.
And here's how it all paid off so beautifully. All of a sudden, customers weren't just buying a PC. They were walking into stores and asking, does it have Intel inside? This consumer demand gave Intel enormous power over the PC manufacturers. Companies like Dell, IBM, and Compaq, they had to use Intel chips and even pay a premium for them, because that's what their customers were demanding.
So, let's just pull this all together for a second. This wasn't just one lucky break or one smart move. It was a series of brilliant interlocking strategies that built a tech empire.
It's really a three-step process when you look at it. First, that handshake with IBM put them right at the dawn of the PC era. Second, that partnership led to the x86 standard, creating this massive ecosystem that they completely controlled. And third, their powerhouse IDM model allowed them to out-innovate and outproduce everybody else. It was a perfect system, a fortress of dominance.
So, Intel set the standard for the PC age, building the invisible architecture that defined a whole generation of technology. And that kind of leaves us with a final question, right? In our world today, a world of AI, cloud computing, and smartphones, who's building the invisible standards that will end up shaping our future?